Hola a todos. Hi everyone, it's me, and I'm here to do a kind of review video of everything we spoke about in last night's lesson. So, last night's lesson, as you know, was feedback on the common errors from the subjunctive workbooklet. So, I'll go through some of the main points that we covered last night, along with some of the examples as well. So, the first thing I started with last night was the different forms of the verb querer. So, querer is to want, and it's one of these verbs that exist in Spanish, what's called radical changing verbs, where some of the forms change slightly from the main stem of the infinitive. So, querer belongs to a group of verbs where the e of the stem changes to IE in most of the forms, but not for nosotros or vosotros. So, um, because of that, we have the infinitive querer, but I want is quiero. 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 That IE continues for the two, él and ella, and ellos, ellas forms. Okay, so I want quiero. You want quieres. He and she wants, or you usted want, quiere. For the nosotros and vosotros forms, we go back to the original stem from the infinitive. So the I disappears and it just goes back to que. Queremos, be careful with the stress on that one. It's not queremos, it's queremos. And queréis. Okay, so the I disappears for nosotros and vosotros, and then it comes back again for the they form, the ellos, ellas form, quieren. Okay, so we have quiero, quieres, quiere, queremos, queréis, quieren. And there's quite a large group of verbs that do this. So a similar one would be entender. Entender, to understand. Entiendo, entiendes, entiende. Entendemos, entendéis, entienden. And that's not the only group of radical changing verbs. We have another group as well where the O changes to UE, like poder becomes puedo. Puedo, puedes, puede. Podemos, again, we go back to the O. Podemos, podéis, pueden. Okay, so there are two main groups of these types of verbs where the E changes to an IE and the O changes to UE. But in both cases, we have no change for nosotros and vosotros. Those forms are exactly what you would expect them to be. There is another smaller group of these verbs where the E changes only to an I. Okay, so not IE, but changes only to an I. And one of the common ones is the verb pedir. So pedir means to ask or to request or to order, like to order something online. So, but the E doesn't change to IE, it changes only to I. So I ask or I request is pido, Pido, and that comes from the verb pedir, pedir. So pido, pides, pide, but then we go back to the E for nosotros and vosotros. Pedimos, pedis, and then back to I again, piden. Okay, but that's a much smaller group compared to the IE group, like entender and um, querer, for example. So be aware of these verbs because there's a lot of them and you need to know when they change. Okay, because it's very, very common. But the verbs that do change, there is no change for nosotros and vosotros. A few people, when they were doing their workbooklets, were writing we want as queremos. Queremos doesn't exist, and nor does queremos. Okay, it's queremos. There's no IE in the nosotros form. Okay, so the second kind of common error, where the English words that end tion and the correct form of them in Spanish. Okay, words that end tion, they change in Spanish and they become cion, and the O has an accent as well. So we're always stressing the final syllable of these words. So action, ACTION in English, that becomes acción or acción in Spanish. And the spelling of acción would be ACCIO with an accent N. So action, acción, or acción. As I explained last night, the sh sound doesn't exist in Spanish. So you wouldn't pronounce it as acción, it's acción or acción. So either with a TH sound or an S sound. And the same with the other examples we looked at. Nation becomes nación, NACIO with an accent N. Information, información or información. And complication, complicación or complicación. The next common mistake was with a and el. A means at or to, and el is the for masculine words. And when you use those words together, you cannot have a, el. They combine together and they become al. Okay, so the examples I gave last night was, first of all, using the word supermarket. El supermercado. Now, if you want to say where is the supermarket, you say ¿Dónde está el supermercado? Where is the supermarket? But if you want to say I'm going to the supermarket, voy a, so is I'm going to, so voy al supermercado. Okay, because a and el become al. So you cannot have voy a el supermercado. And if you think about it, that's really difficult to say. So it's easier to say voy al supermercado. Okay. And the same if you're going to anywhere that's a masculine noun with el. Voy al museo, voy al teatro, voy al concierto. A is also used for personal a. And personal a is used when you have a specific person and you want to say, I'm doing something to this person. Okay, so the example in the subjunctive booklet was, I want you to pay the waiter. Okay, quiero que pagues. And then some of you just said el camarero, but in Spanish you have to pay to the waiter. Okay, so some people also said voy a el camarero. Some people said pagues a el camarero. But actually it has to be pagues al camarero because we have this personal a and the a and el come together to make al. You don't do it with any other form of the. So we don't do it with la, los, or las. We only do it with el. So a and el become al. And the same with the word de, meaning of or from. De and el become del as well. The next common error was one about accent. Okay, so there are pairs of words, as I explained yesterday, there are pairs of words that are identical. They have a different meaning, and the way they are distinguished in writing is only because one of them will have an accent. So I gave certain examples yesterday, but the first one I started with was si and si. So si when the I has the accent means yes. Si without an accent means if. Um, and that's why in writing, if you want to say something like, yes, if you want, you need the accent so you know which word is which. So, si with an accent, si quieres. So, si quieres. And you would need the accent there to distinguish which words. Other pairs of words that do this, I explained last night, are más. Okay, so más with an accent means more. Again, in the subjunctive booklet, that was a very common mistake. People left off the accent of the word más, meaning more, because más without an accent means but. Tú, tú with the accent is the subject pronoun. Tú hablas, tú pasas, tú trabajas. Without an accent, it means your. Tu casa, tu coche. Okay, so another one was de. So de with an accent is I give in the present subjunctive. Quieres que dé el dinero? You want me to give the money. De without the accent is of or from. Okay, so we have these pairs of words, and the only way they're distinguished in writing is that one will have an accent and the other doesn't. So the accent is highly important. Another error from the subjunctive workbook was the word something and thing. So tell me something. The word for something here is algo. You don't need another word for thing. Algo is always something and it never changes. Okay? The word for thing is cosa. Okay? And we use that word when we want to talk about one thing, two things, three things. Okay? Or an unspecified number of things. But something is algo, and then thing to count is cosa. So one thing, una cosa. Two things, dos cosas. Three things, tres cosas. Okay? But when you want to say something, you don't need to include that word cosa. Okay? So, algo. So, tell me something, dime algo. Tell me two things, dime dos cosas. Tell me three things, dime tres cosas. Another common error was the sentence, she says it's very beautiful. Now, there were two main errors with this sentence that people were making. First of all, in English, it's fine to say, she says it's beautiful. But in what we would consider correct English, you should say, she says that it's beautiful. And that's what you have to say in Spanish. You cannot leave out the word that. Okay, so there are some examples where in English we can leave out the word that. I say that. I think that. I believe that. Okay, we can leave the word that out, but you cannot do it in Spanish. So for the first part of that sentence, she says it's very beautiful. We have to say, she says that it's very beautiful. Ella dice que. So we need the que. Okay. And then for the second part of the sentence, it's very beautiful. We don't require the subjunctive. Okay. Because it's being stated as a fact. Okay. It is an opinion, but it's being stated as a fact. She says it's very beautiful. So, dice que es muy bonita. Okay. You don't need sea. Okay. Also, the correct verb there would be ser. Okay, so you need es, not está. Okay, when we're talking about something's appearance, we use ser, not estar, because we're talking about integral characteristics of the thing, the appearance. So we would use ser to describe something as beautiful or ugly or something like that. We don't use estar. So yeah, for that sentence, she says that it's very beautiful. Dice ella, dice que es muy bonita. There is one time after the verb decir where you would use the subjunctive, and it's when someone is telling you to do something. So, for example, um, she says you have to arrive early. Dice que tengas que llegar temprano. So there we have to use the subjunctive because it's an instruction. Okay, but here in this particular sentence, she says it's very beautiful. We don't need the subjunctive. But you do have to include que. Okay, let's arrive early. This was the next common error. Let's arrive early, or any of the sentences with let's. I explained during the lesson that to say let's do something, you just use the nosotros, the we form of the subjunctive. Okay, so let's arrive early, lleguemos temprano. So the verb is llegar. So llegamos means, with the amos ending, means we are arriving early. It's a statement of fact. Okay, llegamos temprano. Vamos a llegar means we're going to arrive early. So in both cases, the decision is already made. Okay. A few people try to use words like dejar or permitir because it was let's. But if you use a word like permitir or dejar, that would be more like please let me arrive early, give me permission to arrive early. And that's not what we're saying here. What we're saying is it's a suggestion. Let's arrive early, okay? Lleguemos temprano. So any of those sentences with let's, okay, all you need is the nosotros form of the subjunctive. So let's arrive early, lleguemos temprano. Let's dance, bailemos. Let's eat, comamos. Okay, so it's that easy. You don't need a word for allow, permit. It's not we're going to do something. Just use the subjunctive form from the nosotros. And I also want to bring attention to the spellings of the vosotros forms. Okay, in the vosotros forms, both for the simple present tense and the present subjunctive form, we need an accent on the a or the e. So the endings are a, ais and eis. Okay, so on the a or the e, we always need a subjunctive form. Okay, so I'll use the verb hablar first of all. So habláis español. Yous are speaking Spanish. Okay, on the a, habláis, we need an accent. So HABL, A with an accent, IS, because that accent tells you that you have to pronounce the A and the I separately. If you don't have that accent, then it's pronounced ice, habláis, but that's not how it's pronounced, it's habláis. Okay, so the accent on the a tells us that we need to pronounce the a and the I separately. And then the subjunctive form for the verb hablar, let's say the sentence is, I want all of you to speak Spanish. Quiero que habléis español. And again, the accent is on the e, the letter E, and it's telling you to pronounce the E and the I separately. It's not ice, habláis, it's habléis. Okay, so we need the accents here. And the same with the verb comer. Coméis una tortilla. Yous are eating a tortilla. I want yous to eat the tortilla. Quiero que comáis la tortilla. Okay, so we've got eis and ais, and you need an accent on both of them. So the spelling for this was important. It's possible that some of you didn't know how to type the accents, but I think Douglas has put things on the group chat to explain how to do this if you need help with it. So yeah, but if you don't know how to type the accents, it's worth learning how to do them because it makes your Spanish correct. Okay, so be careful with the accents on the. You need the accents on lots of different forms, but be careful with them, particularly for the vosotros forms, because they are almost always there. And I finished last night with a review of the words for my, your, his, and her, and so on. So I'll do that too. Oh, excuse me. So I'll finish with a review of that as well. So we have two sort of main things we need to think about. So for most of the words like my, your, his, and their, you don't need to worry about masculine and feminine. Okay, the only time you need to do that is with the words our and your when it's referring to all of your. Okay, in other words, the vosotros equivalent. So, um, for I'm going to use the words hermano and hermana, brother and sister, for this. Okay, so my brother, mi hermano. Okay, and me without an accent. Okay, because the word me with an accent means me and not my. So mi hermano, my brother. Okay, mi hermana is my sister. Okay, so you don't have to worry when it's me, you don't need to worry whether it's masculine or feminine. Okay, and the same with tu to mean your. And again, the word tu has no accent. So tu hermano, your brother, tu hermana, your sister. There is no difference in Spanish between his and her. Both of them are su. Okay, so su hermano could be his brother or her brother, and su hermana, his brother or her sister. And that su can also be your when you're talking to usted, señor, señora. So su hermano, su hermana, your brother, señor or señora, your sister, señor or señora. Okay. And then su is also the word for their, as in their brother or their sister. So su hermano, their brother, su hermana, their sister. And normally the context of the conversation would make it clear who it is, okay? But if it's not clear, you might find that Spanish people put in a clarifier, okay? So if it's su hermano, but that could be his, her, or their, they would probably put in some clarifier like su hermano de ellos or su hermana de él, for example. But normally the context would make it clear who it is. For our brother and our sister, here we do have to think about whether it's masculine or feminine. So our brother would be nuestro hermano. Nuestro hermano. With the o ending on nuestro. Our sister, because sister is feminine, we have to change it. So it becomes nuestra hermana. So nuestro hermano, our brother. Nuestra hermana, our sister. And the same thing happens with your when it's referring to all of your. Okay, this is the equivalent of vosotros, talking to people you address as vosotros. So, and the word is vuestro and vuestra, not os and not vos. Those mean something completely different. So, vuestro and vuestra. Vuestro hermano, all of your brother, use all of your brother, all of your brother. Vuestra hermana, use your sister. Okay, so we have nuestro and nuestra, for our, and vuestro and vuestra for your, referring to all of you. Okay, so that's the singular versions. Mi, tu, su, nuestro, nuestra, vuestro, vuestra, su. And then for the plural, because we don't need to worry so much about masculine and feminine, apart from nuestro and vuestro, but we do have to worry about singular and plural. Okay, so if we have brothers and sisters, okay, so my brothers would be mis hermanos. Okay, so we're just adding the S onto me to make it plural. Mis hermanos, my brothers. Mis hermanas, my sisters. Okay, and again, in the plural, no difference between masculine and feminine. And that pattern continues for tu and su. So, tus hermanos, your brothers. Tus hermanas, your sisters. Sus hermanos, his brothers, her brothers, your usted brothers and their brothers. Sus hermanas, the same for sisters. So his sisters, her sisters, your sisters, if it's referring to usted, and their sisters. Okay, and then for nuestro and vuestro, we have to worry about masculine and feminine and plural again. So our brothers, nuestros hermanos. Our sisters, nuestras hermanas. Your brothers, when it's referring to all of you, vuestros hermanos. And your sisters, when it's referring to all of you again, vuestras hermanas. Okay, so for the plural, mis, tus, sus, nuestros, nuestras, vuestros, vuestras, sus. Okay, so that's a review of everything we did in last night's lesson. This is us now focusing on accuracy. Okay, so we know our general ideas. We now have to focus on accuracy, and that's something that I'm happy that the subjunctive booklet has given me to do, and I'll continue with that next lesson. Okay, so I'll continue with the errors from the subjunctive booklet, and then after that I'll go on to the exercise I gave out to you, the sentences that had the deliberate mistakes. Okay, so I hope you found this revision video helpful. Let me know if you have any questions and I'll explain them. Okay, thanks. Hasta luego.